Scores of people have been killed or wounded in the southern Iraqi province of Basra, while about 6,200 cases of diarrhea have also been reported as a result of water contamination. Now, the government has said that there have been no casualties so far with the cholera epidemic in Basra. 6 are said to be dead and about 75 injured as a result of clashes that accompanied the protests in the southern Iraqi province of Basra as the tensions continue to escalate in the oil-rich province. A U.S. State Department official has said that President Donald Trump has ordered the $25 million earmarked for the care of Palestinians in East Jerusalem hospitals should be directed elsewhere as a part of a review of the American aid. Now, Trump has called for a review of U.S. assistance to the Palestinians earlier in the year to ensure that the funds were not being spent in accordance with American national interest and were not being misused by other people such as Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, and that the money that was going into Palestine was actually providing value to the taxpayers. Now, the aid cut is the latest in a number of actions by the Trump administration that has alienated the Palestinians further, including the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The thousands of people demonstrated in Paris and other French cities demanding action against climate change. The demonstrations are also aimed to show support for former Environment Minister Nicolas Hulot, who quit in frustration over the government's approach. Now, the police have said that as many as about 18,500 protesters took to the streets in Paris, joining a global campaign that is dubbed the Rise for Climate, and a French one launched in support to Hulot, who quit on the 28th of August. Non-governmental organizations estimatedly turned out as many as 50,000 people, and thousands of people also marched in cities which included Marseille, Strasbourg and Toulouse. Protests against climate change were not limited to France, but in 89 other countries, which included the United States as well. Now, the rolling 24-hour event peaked in San Francisco, where an estimated thousands of people snaked through the city, chanting and carrying handmade signs and banners. The several slogans were barbs from the heart of Blue America pointed at Washington. Now, in Colombia, climate change protesters took to the streets demanding the end to fossil fuel production and called on the government to embrace renewable energy. Thousands of Colombians held protests march in the streets of Bogota last year. Colombia's former Environment Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo has said that climate change has put nearly about 12 million Colombians at risk from natural disasters such as flooding and landslides, which could potentially kill hundreds and also cause serious infrastructure damage. Around 2,000 protesters gathered in Munich to demonstrate against the far-right alternative for Germany politician Beatrix von Storch. Now, the AfD leader has in fact been campaigning for Bavaria's state election, where the party hopes to take away seats from the Christian Social Union. Now, the controversial politician has been earlier investigated by the police for incitement of hatred. Protesters clashed with police in the Greek city of Thessaloniki, where Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has unveiled his vision for the future during the opening ceremony of the 83rd Thessaloniki International Trade Fair. Now, Tsipras defended his agreement with Greece's lenders in August of 2015, as he said today that the country could actually face the future with greater confidence and certainty. Now, on the other hand, the Greeks threw in sticks and stones at the police, who responded with tear gas and stun grenades during a protest over Greece's deal with neighbouring Macedonia to end a decades-long dispute over its name. A fierce wildfire has forced the closure of an interstate highway in Northern California for the third day. The Delta Fire, which erupted on Wednesday, has scorched nearly about 25,000 acres in the Cascade Range. As the firefighters battle the wildfire, efforts are being made to protect homes and small communities in the sparsely populated fire zone. But the fire has spread quickly through the drought-stricken pine forests, which are thick with dead and dying timber ravaged by bark beetle infestations. Now, California's wildfire threat could actually intensify again next week, with forecasts calling for a statewide heat wave in the days ahead. "75 people in Egypt were awarded the death penalty over a 2013 sit-in. Two prominent Muslim Brotherhood leaders are amongst those who've been convicted. Clashes between supporters of Mohammed Morsi and the security forces at Cairo's Rabah Adawiyah Square in 2013 had killed at least about 800 people. At least about 21 people have died and several others were injured when a bus carrying domestic tourists crashed and plunged into a ravine in the Indonesian island of Java. The crash took place when the bus with about 37 people on board was heading to a holiday spot in Sukabumi region of West Java. The vehicle was seen speeding downhill and lost control before plunging into a 10-meter deep ravine. Victims who were injured were taken to several local hospitals. North Korea has kicked off its 70th anniversary celebrations of the founding of its country with a music concert at Pyongyang's indoor gymnasium. North Korean chairman of the Standing Committee, Kim Yong-nam, attended the concert along with military officers and soldiers. The celebrations are expected to showcase a country that has secured a nuclear arsenal and is now focusing on developing its economy and cultivating international relations. Sunday's events will kick off about a month of performances as well as a trade show and other visits that are designed to drum up foreign investment and tourism spending in the sanction-strapped country. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a mausoleum of the country's former leaders to mark the 70th anniversary of the state's founding. The state-run television KRT aired a video of Kim bowing in front of statues of the country's founder Kim Il-sung and also the late leader Kim Jong-il. The Kumsusan Palace of the Sun before walking into the room where the embalmed bodies of both late leaders lie in state and bowing again. Now, Kim Jong-un also held a meeting with chairwoman of the Russian Federation Council Valentina Matviyenko and received a letter sent by President Vladimir Putin. Sweden goes to polls today. A survey on Friday has showed the centre-left bloc holding a slim lead over the centre-right. But both are short of a majority, and the anti-immigration Sweden Democrats could yet emerge as the largest single party. The ruling Social Democrats and Greens and their parliamentary ally, the Left Party, are backed by about 39.5% of the votes. Now, the other of the two blocs that has defined the Swedish politics for almost over a decade, and the four-party centre-right alliance coalition have trailed close behind with about 38.5% of the votes. A 61-year-old South Korean man has been diagnosed with the potentially deadly Middle East respiratory syndrome, or what is known as MERS. The patient returned to Seoul after a business trip to Kuwait from the 16th of August. This is the first time since July 2015 that an outbreak of MERS has been reported in South Korea. The infectious disease swept the country in 2015, leading to about 38 fatalities. MERS is thought to be carried by camels, and most of the known human-to-human transmission has in fact occurred within healthcare settings. The first international lifeline rope rescue competition kicked off in southwest China's Chongqing municipality. The 10 world-class rescue teams from countries including China, Belgium, Japan, Canada participated in the competition to show off their skills on the cliff of Jinfo Mountain. The competition aims to exchange rescue skills and ideas amongst different countries and does not have a ranking list. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel has visited the capital of Macedonia to make a final plea to Macedonians to vote in support of the country's NATO and EU membership bids and on its agreement with Greece on the country's name in an upcoming referendum. And also in June, NATO had sent an invitation to Macedonia to begin accession talks with the alliance following a landmark accord with Greece over the former Yugoslav republic's name. Now, Greece has in fact refused to accept the country's name, saying that it implied territorial claims on the Greek province of Macedonia and also was tantamount to an appropriation of its ancient civilization. It had also blocked the country's EU and NATO membership bids as well. The Chinese government's top diplomat has defended Beijing's Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative during a visit to Pakistan, rejecting criticism that the project had saddled Pakistan with expensive debt. The State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Pakistan for a 3-day visit in the first high-level meeting between the neighbours since new Prime Minister Imran Khan took office. Beijing has pledged $57 billion in terms of loans for Pakistan as a part of its vast Belt and Road Initiative, deepening ties at a time when Islamabad's relations with Washington are fraying over how to deal with the Islamist militants waging war in Afghanistan. Now, days after the National Conference announced its decision to not participate in the Panchayat and urban local body elections, the party has now threatened to boycott the assembly and parliamentary elections as well if the Indian government not take effective steps for the protection of Article 35A. The statement that was made by former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir Farooq Abdullah, who said that his party is not running away from polls, but he wants the centre to do justice with the people of Jammu and Kashmir first and then take effective steps for the protection of the state's special position. In a bid to promote tourism, Egypt has opened doors of a 4,000-year-old tomb to the public. The tomb in the Sahara necropolis near Giza was discovered in the 1940s. It belongs to an ancient Egyptian high-ranking official named Mehu, who was said to be related to the first king of the 6th dynasty. The tomb includes 2 chambers, both with wall inscriptions of the owner of the tomb hunting, as well as drawings showing aspects of ancient Egyptian lives, such as hunting and acrobatic dancing. Now, Britain's Gary Hunt has recorded his 3rd victory on the bounce as the Cliff Diving World Series held its penultimate event in Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina. The 6-time world champion Hunt now moves ahead of American Stephen Loeb in the World Series rankings with a win, which also means that the Briton becomes the first diver to complete repeat victories in Mostar. And in the women's event, Mexico's Adriana Jimenez claimed victory in the top spot in the overall rankings from Rhiannon Ifland of Australia, who finished 2nd in Mostar. The hundreds of Romanians attended an open-air concert of the German pianist David Martello in the Victory Square in front of the Parliament almost a month after over 450 anti-government protesters were hurt during the violent clashes with police. Some of the people attending wore gas masks and called for the government to resign. The residents in Russian city of Tomsk were left wondering as a local pastry company flung about 150 kilograms of their produce into the eager crowd. But the crowd was of course left wondering if it was a trick or simply a treat. The tarts, called kartoshka, which means potato in Russia, were prepared by the company Antonov Dvor and dished out at a food fair. The company weighed their pastry for the local book of records, and then volunteers started throwing handfuls of the packed tarts into the crowd. John Lennon's iconic mop top, round glasses and grin now adorn a United States postal stamp. Lennon's widow Yoko Ono and also their son Sean Lennon were in New York City's Central Park to celebrate the U.S. Postal Service's release of a stamp honoring the late Beatle. The commemorative stamp features a photograph of Lennon taken in 1974 on the roof of his Manhattan apartment building by photographer Bob Gwynn. The designer Ralph Lauren celebrates 50 years in fashion business with a luxurious and a joyous bash in Manhattan's Central Park around a famous 19th century fountain. The guests were treated to a runway show celebrating Lauren's styles, both past and present, and then they sat down for a formal dinner to toast the 78-year-old designer. The star-studded affair drew in names such as Steven Spielberg, Kanye West, Anne Hathaway, Priyanka Chopra, Nick Jonas, and Jessica Chastain. The bejeweled bodices, thigh-high platform pumps, stiletto acrylic nails and seductive fishnet stockings brought a new level of femme fatale for Disney villains. Now, Paris Hilton has joined in the villainous ranks of Ursula Maleficent and more as Cruella de Vil, wearing a shoulder-padded metallic bodysuit and carrying a pup down the catwalk.